Hey everybody, this is Erica from the Classy Climb blog, coming with you today talking about Brexit, but with burgers. Referring to Americans actually giving a damn in this election, proving that people aren't asleep, not yet. Americans are paying attention more and more to things in the news and what's happening to them in their local communities. So why do I call it Brexit with burgers? Well, we all know about the Brexit election this past year and how, England, Britain said, we're going to be sovereign. We're going to be separate. We're not going to be in this big cohesive group of multiculturalism, and whatever the group says is good for the group, it's good for our state, our country too. And that's kind of what happened in America this year, basically, and also with the polls in Brexit. I mean, a lot of Brits said one thing in the polls and did an absolutely different thing. Same thing happened here. Many people had these polls going, and the polls were off. They misread the wrong people. The media was completely off. Everybody was off. But when you saw, and these are two things were key for me. When you saw Bernie Sanders have 60,000 people in a stadium, when you saw Donald Trump pack out stadiums, even though their messages were very much on the streams, it was calling out to a particular voter. It was calling out to an American that's most likely overlooked. And I just pulled up a few articles today. I'm going to totally add them somewhere in here. I'll try to add them to the bottom, but in the info. But basically, the article said there's 16 categories of people ahead of white people as far as income and pay and lifestyle. And I mean, literally, number one, if I'm not mistaken, was Indian American at 100,000 a year average. Number two was like Taiwanese. Number three was Filipino. I mean, it was crazy. And I mean, it goes down through all of them, Australians, African countries, you name it. Many different African countries that are now citizens in America are doing financially well above white Americans. And so it tapped into something. Like I told people in many of my videos, when I was at the hospital, I had 3 doctors. All 3 are from Africa. 2 were from Nigeria. 1 was from Ghana. I had multiple nurses come in my room. Either my nurse was from Ohio and a white lady escaping bad job economy in Ohio, or African nurses from Nigeria. And I mean, I literally was just like in shock, like, it's just a Nigerian party? Is everybody coming over here from Nigeria or something? And it was impressive to me. It was impressive to me that the hospital was so multicultural, that the hospital was so reflective of what's really going on in our society, is the fact that immigrants are coming here and they're living quite well. And Americans that are here are kind of frustrated. And there's many reasons why they're frustrated. One is this kind of the thing that was happening most is there's all these skilled jobs that pay well, but they don't have, Americans aren't having the skills. And even when they threaten to take away a lot of these visas, you'd be taking away a bulk of the Indian engineers in our society and would be leaving a gaping hole at Apple, Google, Facebook, all these big companies that hire a bunch of people. I mean, even the Research Triangle in Raleigh, North Carolina, there's a city 25 miles north of Atlanta, Georgia that has 900 tech companies that just moved there. And it completely changed the high schools. It completely changed the elementary schools. And many of the residents left the city and moved like 5 minutes down the street to a smaller town, saying their town had changed. Their town wasn't reflective of America. But the sad part is it is reflective of America. Since 1990, 60% of our population growth and change has been from immigrants and their children. Since 1990. And so they make a joke on CNN, all these places, about, after this election, it's going to be nothing but Hispanics. America's going to be Latin America. And sadly enough, it's kind of true. If you actually Google this and look it up for yourself, white Americans only make up 62%. The white male only makes up 31%. Now, many people say, no, Erica, it's 77. That's where the kicker is. 62% is when you take out Latinos, white Latinos out. And listen, George Lopez looks almost as dark as me, and he's in that category of white Latinos. So if that gives you any indication of how off that is, there you go. Another one is Middle Eastern and North Africans are included in white. So we have people who are from Egypt and Sudan and all these places, and they look like me and being included as white on the census. So the numbers have changed. The country has changed. And some people are just now waking up. So yeah, it's Brexit with burgers because it's still this last stand of like, hey, my town is changing. My city is changing. And I feel left behind. What can we do about that? Well, again, look at your local immigrant. Look at your local neighbor. They're living everywhere around us. What are some things they're doing? And as far as for their children, is focusing on STEM, it's focusing on tech, it's focusing on even having small service businesses. Now, you hear me talk a lot on this channel about small corner stores and how they own them, and a lot of times they get other people to work for them in the small corner stores, but that's the point. They own the store. Their kids have future jobs if they want. You know, I've told you about tax offices. I have friends who have tax offices and their kids work for them. And so now their kid not only has a skill, if they want to go open up a franchise, a Liberty Tax franchise down the street, they can. There are many places that I'm seeing opportunity and growth, but regular Americans don't want them. A really great show is Blue Collar Millionaires on CNBC. Definitely check it out. I think it's worth your while. And you'll see pretty much the average day Joe doing jobs people didn't want. Septic tanks, construction in hot Texas on the asphalt, lawn care businesses, AC heating businesses in Texas. You know, if your AC goes out in Texas, it's a life emergency. At many apartment complexes, they have to fix it within 6 hours. So those guys stay busy. Those guys stay booked. Even when you work at a complex, those guys make on average $25 to $30 an hour and get discount on apartment rent. But overall, if they worked outside of the apartment complex, they could make up to $80 an hour, $100 an hour because emergency calls. So it's important for you to focus on these trades. And if I were you, I would just go grab your local community college pamphlet and read over some of the trades and how long they take, because you'd be amazed. Some of them only take 6 months, a year, 18 months. And what I tell people is the time will pass either way. It's better to pass with the skill and an opportunity to go wherever you want with it. Even with truck driving, people hate when I talk about CDLs and the opportunity for people to make $50,000 to $80,000 a year driving a truck. Well, a lot of times they have short range truck driving where you're only driving an hour or 2 hours up the street, dropping something off, and you're not even touching it. You're just backing the truck up, driving back to your town and going home for that day. Those guys are even making 60, 70 grand a year because they're so short-handed on guys with skill. And a lot of these companies are willing to train people in 17 days. 17 days, a whole different life in 17 days. So why did this election matter? It's because there's some things happening right now. So there's another reason I was telling folks I made a separate channel. It's kind of more conservative talk and more with guns, talking about gun safety and what guns I like. I've made a separate channel because African Americans and minorities of all races, especially immigrants, are now buying guns at like some of the highest rates seen in the whole nation's history after Trump's election. Elections matter. Elections have consequences. Now, do I think there'll be more violence or anything like that? No, necessarily, but I think people are feeling a nervousness to protect themselves, and they should, and to use their Second Amendment, because if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Now, I have a friend who's very anti-gun, and that's fine. I respect her opinion on it. But at the end of the day I would much rather be with my friends who do have a gun if we're somewhere in a dark alley than with her. I get it. Self-defense is important. Kicking and fighting and screaming is great, but you must protect yourself. It's important. So look, does this election matter? Yes. Are Americans a bunch of racists? No, I think Americans are waking up and saying, wait a minute, Clinton's wife is going to run? Why? Even the thing with her foundation and the Saudis giving her money. It's such corruption there. It's ridiculous. But it's some people putting their feet in the sand for the last stand, like, hey, give me my country back. And not in necessarily a racist way, but in a way of going, hey, I pay attention and I know Social Security won't last. I'm paying attention and I know public school system might not last 20 years. And people get scared when I say this, but this is going to happen. If we get to a point where Social Security and the interest on our debt is the only thing we can afford to pay, the public school system is not what we're going to be doing. We're going to cut that budget. Because if you remember in the 1970s, each state took care of their public school system. The reason we took it over by the state so we could have universal education levels, so that everyone would be on the same page, that you wouldn't be in Mississippi or you'd be in Maryland and y'all are learning two different things in two different countries' history, okay? If you get my point. All right, and there's some parts up north that are just as rough, okay? So I don't always put that on the South. I'm from the South, real South, and when I say the real South, I mean North Carolina. And I'm very proud of my state. We did very great efforts to educate everyone equally as much as possible. And it went over quite well. If you know anything about Charlotte's history, is when they had to desegregate schools, Charlotte was like, let's just bite this bullet and get it over with. And so they were very proud of that. And when Ronald Reagan even came in and made negative remarks in Charlotte, North Carolina about desegregation and busing students, Charlotte people booed him because they were like, hey, you better back up. We're we're fair and balanced here. We'll bust these children wherever we want. We'll get it as equal as possible. Unlike our neighbor, South Carolina, but that's another story for another day. And the thing of it is we can't afford that. We'll just let it kick back to the states. There's going to be many privatization things happening in the next 20 years. I think will scare some of y'all, but will be what was doomed to happen anyway. The state can't afford everything. I mean, some of our national parks, I feel, are going to be sold to private companies. You're going to see the AT&T National Park and stuff like that. You're going to have some real crazy changes come along. If you even notice right now, 80% of the home buyers in Vancouver, Canada, and parts of Washington, and also Portland, Oregon, actually, just not Portland, but Oregon, are actually Chinese foreigners. Same thing with Texas. There's huge swatches of Texas and North Carolina and businesses in these states that Chinese foreigners are coming in and buying up because they see the long-term investment and the power of privatization and having a private business and what the difference will be in about 5 to 20 years in America. So I think this is the moment you need to be paying attention for is, how can I invest? And I did another video about how to take $5 and invest in Robinhood app. Is $5 enough to invest in stocks? Yeah, sure it is. You can start with $5. You can start with $25 with Lending Club. You can start with even less depending on your state and the note process they make you invest in. So don't tell me you don't have ways to invest your money. You have plenty of ways, and you can start with $5 and $25. But you got to actually take some action. You got to take some steps to kind of curtail what's happening. So look, you want to feel in control of your country. You want to feel in control of your life. You want to feel like your children will have some future in America. Donald Trump's presidency is scaring you. Well, focus on trades. Focus on the, if you go to Wikipedia, I think it's broken down annual income by ethnicity is on there. They even break down a separate part for American Indians. I actually like that. But I'll put the link below. And look, if you guys want to talk to me, if you need any consulting, any other questions you have about my courses, look for the links below. I always try to put them in the video. You guys, this is Erica. Have a happy Turkey Day. Listen, this is still your country. We did Brexit America, but in a good way. I think it's a good moment where everybody's paying attention. Some people are in fear, some people are not, but you should at least be paying attention. So you guys have a great day.